Hi, everyone. Austin Wells here at Let's Financial. Appreciate everybody joining today. Appreciate you taking some time out of your day today to talk about some 401k plans with us. But those who don't know me, I'm a retirement plan services manager here at Let's Financial. Ultimately today, I know everybody joined for different reasons, but the 401k plans, complicated benefit, becoming more complicated, especially with the Secure Act and Secure Act 2.0 that were passed in the last 4 years, and those 110 plus provisions that came along with those legislations. So today we're going to talk about kind of the increased focus from plan sponsors to assure that they're always making the best decisions in the for their plans, for their employers, and the employees that use those plans. And additionally, the increased appetite from those employees for outsourcing some of those time-consuming administrative pieces that come along with the 401k and the administration and the plan sponsorship. So today we'll talk about the overview of the Lutz Pooled Employer Plan, which is something we started to kind of solve all of those and be a turnkey solution for that. The benefits and responsibilities of plan sponsors inside of those plans. And then transitioning to a plan like that or starting one up from scratch, kind of the process of that. And by the end of this, I hope that, we provide the confidence that, that Lutz Financial provides a solution for plan sponsors to simplify their life when it comes to retirement plans, provides advice from specialists like myself in the 401k plan space to not only the employers, but the employees of those plans and the people that utilize that plan. And then ultimately it frees up time and the burden of offering a 401k plan to your staff. So Chris Brown's waiting for you guys to let him in.
Okay. We're on live. I'll send it to him.
It's a Zoom meeting, right?
Yep, I'll send it to him.
Okay. You're on the meeting. So ultimately, as we go through this, just shoot some questions in the chat as you go through this, and after each slide, I'll address those questions as it relates to what we're talking about. But a quick overview of Lutz Financial. We are a registered investment advisor, an RIA, and what that ultimately means is we provide independent, unbiased advice to our clients. So regardless of the providers, regardless of the record keeper, TPA, any other third parties or the investment managers, we are here to provide the best solution for your company, for your people, in any capacity, right? So today we manage just over $1.8 billion in assets as of March of 2023. We have 18 employees. 3 of those, myself included, are dedicated solely to retirement plans. So all I do and all my team does all day, every day is either talk to plan sponsors or employees of those plan sponsors. We have 140 retirement plans as of today. So ultimately, we're not beholden to any investment managers, record keepers. We utilize over 15 different record keepers today. And all that comes down to is different providers work better for different types of companies, the demographics of the companies, the assets in those plans, the amount of participants, it all varies. So we're talking about the pooled employer plan today, but ultimately, which we think is a really good option for a lot of employers, but it may not always be the right option. It's something that we consult with our plan sponsors with and make sure that we're putting them in the best place to succeed. So what is a pooled employer plan? Ultimately is what we're here to talk about today. We refer to it as the PEP. And what that is, the Secure Act introduced these pooled employer plans back in 2019. So in the last 4 years, there's been really a shift in offering 401k plans, and Secure Act, or the introduction of these pooled employer plans, have really put a focus on who is the fiduciaries, who's doing the plan administration, who's taking on these duties. So in a PEP, it was the first time where unrelated group of companies could join together, band their assets, band their participants to gain size and scale efficiencies inside of that plan. So ultimately, it's one single plan where a bunch of employers are a part of, or they adopt, that allows them to share administrative and fiduciary responsibilities. They still control the individual plan design for their employees. So you still get the decision of eligibility, entry points, what that looks like for your individual employees. But it still looks and feels like an individual plan to the employees. So you have your login, your website, things of that nature. It's not everybody in that. It's your specific set of employees. And it's really designed to be a turnkey solution for those plan sponsors that is simple and cost effective. Ultimately, we're in a pooled employer plan, you're providing more services, more enhanced processes at a very, very cost effective price point. So creating those operational administrative efficiencies among the whole group of plans, offloading the day-to-day responsibilities, which we'll talk about in more detail here, and mitigating the liability that comes with plan sponsorship, or much of the liability that comes with plan sponsorship. So how are PEPs different than traditional plans? So traditional 401k plans, sponsors are responsible for the vast majority of things that go on in those plans, unless they outsource those to third parties, right? So administering and compliance, record keeping and technology, investment management, participant education. You as the plan sponsor of a single employer plan, ultimately you're responsible for the decisions that happen on all of those fronts. So you can either hire a third party to do those services. Traditionally, those third parties are not acting in a fiduciary capacity. Some may. When we start adding in third parties that act as fiduciaries, sometimes there can be some additional costs, especially as it comes with the administration piece of this. So ultimately, in a pooled employer plan, the PEPs operate under this new entity called a pooled plan provider that was brought about with that Secure Act. And that pooled plan provider is the overseer and ultimately selects the professionals to fulfill each of those services that we just talked about. So the plan administration, the compliance piece, the record keeping and technology, the investment management, and the participant education, all of that is built into this and managed by the pooled plan provider that are making those decisions and essentially selecting and monitoring the individuals that they provide inside there. One of the big differences in a pooled employer plan is the PEP receives one audit and one 5500 for the entire aggregated plans that are inside of that. As of today, in the last 2 years, there's 50 plus plans that are inside of our pooled employer plan. A lot of those were subject to an audit prior to joining the plan. Now the whole plan receives one audit and one 5500, and it's the pooled PPP, the pooled plan provider's responsibility to sign off on that 5500 and the audit. So you as an adopting employer are no longer signing off on those 5500s or the audit. You're just providing the data to the pooled plan provider to aggregate those data points. So large plan filers, so those over 120 participants and soon to be balances, it decreases that individual audit costs, and they are significantly less inside of a pooled plan environment than they were previously. So that's one of the big differences. There's a lot of other differences that we're going to talk about here as we go through this, but just a little overview of the LUTZ pooled employer plan. So there's a lot of acronyms and things that come along with retirement plans, as you may know, but ultimately this is our pooled employer plan. When these came out in 2019, we took a hard look at this and said, we think that this is going to be a really important benefit to not only the clients that we had today, but ultimately other small and medium-sized businesses that this may make a ton of sense for. So us as the PPP selector, we selected a company called Newport to handle all of the PPP duties. So they're the name fiduciary, 316 administrative fiduciary, trustee and custodian, record keeper and administrator. We'll talk about each of those in a little bit more detail, but us as the selector of that, we still hold our place as the investment manager inside of those plans. So we're a 338 investment manager, which is ultimately discretionary ability to make decisions on the investment lineup and the investments that go inside that plan. We help the individual Plan sponsors make decisions and consult on their plan design, operations of the plan, engagement in the employees, and really quarterback the relationship between the PPP, which is Newport Group in this case, and then your team at the plan sponsor. So when we put all that together, that's what it looks like on the right-hand side, is just who is doing what. And ultimately, we'll talk about in adopting employers' responsibilities inside of that framework. But going forward here, your benefits and responsibilities change drastically inside of a pooled employer plan. Ultimately, the biggest benefits are removing that fiduciary responsibility and just the burden and time-consuming duties that come in to play on your staff when sponsoring a plan. So we're going to talk about those in more detail. I know I mentioned this before, but the name fiduciary, in this case, Newport Group, they're the overall administrator of the plan. In a single employer plan, that would be the plan sponsor, and you can outsource some of those duties to, say, a TPA in some cases or in instances. But in this case, Newport Group is the plan administrator. You, as a plan sponsor, change your title to adopting employer. So you're adopting this plan that is ran by the administrator. Now the fiduciary, Newport Group, is responsible for selecting and evaluating all of the other plan fiduciaries inside of the plan. They assume discretionary authority for all of the traditional sponsor responsibilities that you had previously. And that flows down into what's called a 316 administrative fiduciary. Those are the administrative functions of the plan. So requiring notices and disclosures to participants, tracking beneficiaries and eligibility, required plan information and data reports, all of that is taken care of from Newport's side. They're managing and approving all of the plan distributions and contributions, so the ins and outs of the plan and all the plan documents. So once we set up a plan inside of here, we're having a conversation with our team, a plan sponsors team, and Newport design that plan. But then it's Newport's responsibility to operate that plan in accordance with those plan documents. And then us as the 338 investment manager, we have discretionary authority of the plan investments over the entire pooled employer plan. And we're responsible for selecting and monitoring the investments on a quarterly basis. We have our internal investment committee that meets quarterly on this, does a deep dive into the investments that we're offering inside that plan, discuss any changes that may need to be made, and make sure we're providing reporting to the individual employers inside that plan on a quarterly basis. So ultimately, by doing this, we're outsourcing those fiduciary services, and independent providers that we use, like Newport Group and ourselves, none of us have proprietary investments. We're not beholden to any investment companies that we have to use in our plan lineup. Everything is done on a fiduciary basis where it's in the best interest of the employers and the employees inside that plan. The other piece here is cost savings by lessening the resources on your end to sponsor a plan. The time that it takes for HR or whoever it is doing the actual duties of a 401k plan that are no longer there for those individuals. And then just the efficiencies by Newport aggregating all these participants and their requests and all that together. There's some efficiencies to be gained there from an administrative standpoint. We do have a question in the chat. I'm going to stop here for a second and go through that. Do all orgs within a PEP have the same investment menu? That is correct. Inside of a pooled employer plan, we are the 338 fiduciary, and we'll talk about this here in a minute, but there are some benefits to having the entire pooled employer plan have the same investment menu. And I will talk about that, and I'll come back to your question here in a couple slides as it relates to the investment management. So admin responsibilities. This is going down, again, even further into that 316 administrative piece. The PEP has key admin responsibilities, as we talked about, approving distributions, rollovers, quadros, hardship requests. All of that no longer touches plan sponsors, delivering those required notices and reports, tracking eligibility and beneficiaries. ultimately, inside of a pooled employer plan, the PEP is tracking the eligibility of your individual people and sending out the enrollment and the disclosures 30 days prior to that individual hitting their entry date. So that's all being done from the pooled employer plan. It's not something you are having to even worry about. It's data that's gathered through your census and your payroll, and they're using that data to make those decisions and to send out that information. They're also reviewing and signing off on the compliance and 5500 filing each year, and then annual force outs, which is a big deal that is automatically happening on your behalf, forcing out any of those individuals that are under that $5,000 threshold to get them out of your plan, lower your responsibility for those individuals. Ultimately, inside here, the pieces that you maintain as a plan sponsor, or as is this case, adopting employer, just submitting timely and accurate payroll, which you're doing anyways, and making sure that data is accurate, and then providing a year-end census data so Newport, in this case, can reconcile that data to what they've received throughout the year for those individuals. So ultimately, two pieces that you maintain are just those. It's very, very simplified in that manner, making sure that we're moving as much stuff off of your plate onto the pool plan provider at Newport. So the investment management piece, and I'll circle back to your question here. But Lutz Financial is in charge of offering the investment lineup to the plan. So this is part of the way of aggregating and providing efficiencies to the plan is providing one investment lineup. But our planning committee here at Lutz Financial is meeting quarterly, going through the deep dive of all those investments, making changes as necessary, and providing that ongoing monitoring and support to you guys as employers. The one thing that we do get inside of a pooled employer plan, because all of those assets are aggregated up to look and feel like one plan, we have access to institutional fund share classes. So for example, most 401k plans, unless they're mega style plans, they have access to retail share classes. So I can get the S&P 500 index for X amount of basis points. Whereas if once we get to certain levels of assets inside of those plans or inside of those individual funds, we have access to lower cost share classes. So I can get the same S&P 500 fund for a decreased amount or a decreased expense ratio. So there's some efficiencies there that we wouldn't have available in a single employer plan, but ultimately it's decreasing the amount of fees that your individuals are paying inside that plan and increasing their, outcomes over a long period of time. So on top of maintaining a high quality, low cost plan lineup, we're also providing the target date funds and doing some deep dive due diligence into what target date funds are provided to the plan participants. And then additional to that, we offer risk-based portfolios that are really based off of how we manage money on the individual side of our practice. We're bringing that into the pooled employer plan, available to all participants, so they have a little bit more individualized investment management inside there without having to go out and pick and choose their own portfolio or diversify it themselves. So there's a bunch of different ways that we're providing some additional value there inside of the investment management piece. But ultimately, we are discretionary managers on that. So it's taking the responsibility of that plan lineup off of your plate. So in addition to the investment piece, Lutz Financial is also providing the participant experience. In this environment, everything is labeled Lutz Financial. We want to be the first point of contact for you and for your participants to reach out to. So everyone that your employers or everyone at the employer or the individual participants would be speaking with, certified financial planners here at Lutz Financial. We provide, before each engagement with the individual plan adopters, we go through what is the best way to provide one-on-one education, group education to your participants, and to we develop a service schedule to do that, which is best for your company individually. So we do that through one-on-one education advice, group education opportunities, whether that's on-site or through webinars. We do quarterly education webinars that are available to everybody inside the Pooled Employer Plan, which really have different topics ranging from budgeting all the way up to investment management or buying a house, having a child. What are those things to look for when we're doing that? And then we have a lot of resources and tools to help participants make quality decisions. Big part of our management is we look at this paternalistically. We want to provide each individual the best possible ability to make a good outcome for themselves, right? So we want to advise them on how much they're saving in the plan, how they should be saving that money, if it's pre-tax or Roth, what investment's best for their specific situation, bringing that down to the individual level and making sure that they have the ability to use this as a resource in that capacity, really increases the outcomes for them over a long period of time. And then Newport, part of the reason we chose Newport is, number one, they're one of the top 3 biggest providers as far as record keeping goes, and they're the top independent provider, which just means that we don't have any conflicts of interest. But they have award-winning technology that is easy to use and informative, and they make the enrollment process simple as possible, removing as much of the barriers to entry for as many participants as possible. So the easier that process is, the more people we can get engaged and into the 401k plans and ultimately saving for retirement. We got the polling question here. So Reagan's going to send out this polling question. So please answer that if you want to get CPE question or CPE credit, and then send her an email afterwards and she'll send you your certificate. All right, we're back. Thanks for doing that. And ultimately, transitioning your plan, whether you're starting a new plan from scratch or have had a plan for a long time, but you're looking to outsource some of those responsibilities, some of those duties, and make it easier on your staff to operate this over time. Either way, I would say get in touch with us. We'll have a conversation, discuss what makes the most sense for your plan. Is it the Pooled Employer Plan? In a lot of cases, that's a great opportunity, but it's not a one-size-fits-all type of plan. So get in touch with us. We're happy to have a conversation. But either way, if we're moving a 401k plan, it's really a 45 to 60-day process. But ultimately, I would say it's an hour and a half to 2 hours of your time throughout that 45 to 60 days. There's typically a call to discuss, what's the best path forward. Let's set up a timeline for what we want this to look like. If we want it to happen on the first of the year, if we want it to happen on a certain date to when there's a seamless transition, we can do that and make that happen to the best of our abilities to fit any plan, right? So ultimately, we're working with Newport and their dedicated service team that we have available because of the size and scale that we have with them inside of the Pooled Employer Plan. So we have dedicated individuals that are there to help us help you through this transition. So ultimately, if I decide that I want to move this plan and go forward, we can notify the current providers, set up a timeline of how long before that money moves from the current provider to Newport Group. Ultimately, throughout that process, there's some reconciliation of of data, making sure that it's all correct before it moves. There's a call to discuss the new plan design, making sure that this is a great time that if I want to make any changes to my plan design or my plan documents, that we're making those changes through this process and avoiding any amendment fees. So it's a great time to go through the plan design in very, very fine-tooth comb. And then it's setting up, when are these actual transactions going to happen? When are they going to move money from one provider to another? During that time, or 30 days or 40 days prior to that money moving, we're typically setting up notices to participants, education, individual one-on-ones, making sure that those accounts prior to that money being transferred into them, set up and ready to receive that, and that we're notifying participants of all the changes that may happen to their plan as far as, selecting new investments, updating savings rates, all of that stuff. And then there's always a blackout period when transferring from one provider to another, which is basically just freezing your ability to make decisions at the old plan provider while they transfer those assets to the new one. We don't want people changing deferral rates or anything of that nature at an old provider prior to moving to that new provider, for just sake of not messing with the data. But ultimately, that's been a seamless transition. We've done it, it seems like 1,000 times in the last year, but it's over 50 times in the last couple of years. And it's a very, very seamless transition. But we're happy to discuss this in more detail with each and every one of you, just to show you what it looks like from an individual perspective. We do have a couple questions in the chat here I'll address quick. All right, so how large is the PEP group? So we started this 2 years ago. Today in the pooled employer plan, there are over 50 plans, and there are currently 10 in transition moving into that. So it took a minute to ramp up, and there is obviously a 45 to 60-day period where it takes for somebody to join that plan. So it does take some time, but we have over 50 plans in there, 10 in moving. Typically, we're adding another couple each month after that, now that we have this this operation moving efficiently. How extensive is the investment menu? So our investment menu, happy to talk about this with anybody as well, but our investment menu includes a fund from each core asset class. So it's we minimize the amount of investments in each asset class, just because when we provide too many options for employees, typically we see that they tend to not make decisions at all. So we want to simplify those options that are available in that the core menu, but ultimately offering diversified options through the risk-based portfolios, the target date portfolios, that make it much easier to pick something and stick with that over time. But happy to discuss the investment menu in more detail. But it is a low cost index-based investment menu based off of our individual philosophy here at Lutz Financial. And then basically recapping next steps. Ultimately, by adopting a pooled employer plan, we can achieve size and scale, which makes this less expensive for enhanced services, decrease the burden on your staff's time, ultimately freeing them up to focus on what really matters, and that's growing the business, not operating a 401k plan. And then experts assuming those fiduciary risks, Newport on the administrative side, Lutz Financial on the investment management side, and putting the employees of your operations into professional hands. So the certified financial planners at Lutz Financial are the ones that are speaking with your employees on a day-to-day basis, making sure that questions are answered and that they're getting the education and advice that we see a lot of employees reaching out about these days. So ultimately, if you want to discuss this in more detail, or if you just want to have a conversation, you can reach out us today, talk about the pooled employer plan. We're happy to offer you a complimentary view of your current plan, just to show you some of the things that we would look at or think about reach out to me today. My phone number and email is at the bottom there, but it's awells@lutz.us. And we will leave some time for, additional questions. If you guys want to send those in, we can address some of those now, or obviously you can always feel free to reach out to us after this webinar. Just to wrap this up, we appreciate everybody for joining here. We'll just stay on for a little while to answer any questions that come through the chat, but appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us and talk about this. We think it's a huge benefit for a lot of plans, and we're seeing a significant increase in the amount of people that are looking at pooled employer plans. So that's why we wanted to offer this to you today. But look forward to chatting with many of you in the future. And again, we'll stay on here, chat through any of these questions that come through.